The concept of Metroland originated in 1915, but even by 1921, the date by which it was being actively promoted, little had been built in accordance with the Arcadian vision of the planners. The contrived rustic cottage in a bower dwelling for mass outer London housing was beyond the means of a war-blighted national economy, in need of a quick fix to the demands of massive population displacement resulting from mobilisation and recruitment for war industries. My house in Wembley Park was built in 1924 and is nothing like the vision of the wartime planners. Its only concessions were a spacious garden, by today's standards, with a generous provision of trees, now vanished, and the probably ubiquitous crazy paving path, which has somehow survived. It was one of the first post-war houses in the area and, with its 11 immediate companions, remained surrounded by unproductive farmland and pockets of primeval woodland for probably another decade. Until the 1950s, the road outside, today a bus route, was an unmetalled track with a row of trees down the middle. It wasn't until the 1930s that resources became available to realise the Rus in Urbe vision of the Metroland planners. And some of the creations, with their echoes of Hampton Court Palace, particularly in the chimneys, went beyond what the planners visualised. A contributor to this was the disciple of Swedenborg and Frank Lloyd Wright, architect Ernest Trowbridge, appreciation of whose quirky creations is long overdue. He would have proceeded with his architectural version of a rural idyll, even if the Metroland project had never existed. My house is one of 12 semi-detached units based on the same template. Originally, heating consisted of 6 open fires spread over 2 floors, whose effectiveness depended probably on keeping internal doors closed. Casement windows gave a modern, that is to say 20th century, appearance, but the design was basically Victorian, with an outside toilet and probably rather laborious methods of maintaining personal hygiene. Individual space provision was quite generous, as a nuclear family of a couple with 2 children was visualised. The first selling price was £600. Like some of its neighbours, the house was divided into 2 self-contained flats in the 1960s, a ham-fisted conversion executed probably without reference to planning regulations. When I retired in 2007, I was faced with a choice between a long overdue refurbishment or a search for something appropriate to my status. I took the first option at a cost of £80,000, which included deconversion, effective insulation of the roof, attic flooring, installation of a German ceramic heating system, and a new overall decorative scheme. On a minimal budget, within the constraints of an outmoded design, the 1924 architect had given the building some modest qualities, and I decided to enhance these. The basis of my approach was the use of complementary colour contrast, that is to say, yellow next to purple, blue against orange, and red next to green, the effect of which, well known to the Impressionists among other artists, is to intensify the colours thus juxtaposed. The colour contrast of the exterior of my house emphasises the proportions, something that the architect intended to be noticed, as the lower band is demarcated by a moulding, and the central one by a brick string course. The narrowness of the pink upper story band immediately becomes obvious and shows that the upper floor ceilings have been pushed up into the roof space to economize on the height of the building. Whether or not one likes the colors, they enable one to read the building from a distance. The terracotta inserts in other dwellings of the group have been obliterated by the owners. I used the red-green combination in 2 bedrooms. The exterior of a house in a nearby street has also adopted the scheme, though I don't know the circumstances. Yellow and purple are less frequently used next to each other in design schemes. The effect in the staircase, landing area, and master bedroom is complete dispersal of the ambience of a run-of-the-mill North London semi to give a somewhat theatrical illusion. It is particularly effective when struck by full sun. Blue and orange contrasts are quite frequent in the urban environment. I allocated blue and orange to the bathroom, toilet and laundry facilities. The problem here was that there are no commercially available full orange tiles. The colour that I was able to obtain is adequate but not ideal. There remained the kitchen. I decided to have a contrast to the contrasts and opted for a scheme inspired by an artist at the height of his powers in 1924, the Dutch painter Mondrian. As well as having rivals in Holland, he had followers in other countries, particularly Poland, whose work was mostly destroyed during the Second World War. I designed a floor mimicking Mondrian's compositional idiom as close as is possible with the materials available. This is vinyl laminate in 5 colors, which I had to order from several manufacturers. The craftsman, Zibi, worked from my rough sketch on graph paper and took 4 days, starting in the middle. A dividing wall was removed so that enlargement of the space goes from side to side rather than from front to rear. This maximizes the effect of the floor. The structural work was supervised by David Buckingham. I made a bin, flower vase, and a light fixture from acrylic offcuts. The clock was a souvenir from a Kandinsky exhibition based on his educational correlation of primary colors with geometrical shapes. The Rietveld chair is a modern reproduction. There are no originals. Rietveld's 1917 intention was that people with rudimentary DIY skills could make one with standard gauge pieces of wood and assemble without nails or screws. It does actually need some discreet bracing with brackets. The colors were added later. The user was supposed to stick a label underneath with a couplet by the poet Christian Morgenstern. When I sit, I do not want to sit as my rump would like, but rather as my seat brain cells would if they were sitting, mould the chair round themselves. I opened the house to the public under the auspices of Open House London for 2 weekends in 2017 and 2018. In 4 days, it had 240 visitors.